Hello people of YouTube, I am doing a bit of a day trip and I am currently in a small town called Kvenvær at a gas station. I cut it a bit close, but I filled up, I managed, and now we're going to do about 35 kilometers along the south side of an island called Hitra. And I think it's going to be wonderful. Let's do this. Clear the trip meter so that I know that I just filled up and I roughly know when I need to fill up again. Let's go. As soon as we are out of Kvenvær, we should be riding roughly into the opposite direction of the sun. We'll be riding south for a little bit, and then we'll be riding east most of the way. We're all the way on the west side of the island at the moment, and I have done a day trip, which is absolutely delightful. It is currently September the 26th. It's a Tuesday, and a few days ago I started noticing that the weather forecast was absolutely delightful for this here Tuesday. So I decided to work a bit extra through the weekend, and yesterday, on Monday of course, and take today off so that I could enjoy the spectacle that is coastal Norway before I have to put my motorcycle away, because... And I made this same reference in the last monthly review, but winter is coming. It really is. So in about a month, when it is the end of October, I will put my motorcycle into a storage unit, and it will remain there for about 5 months until, I think last year I liberated it at the end of March. Is that right? I got it back for April. Motorcycling wise, this year has been a bit of a weird one. It's my second year owning the Honda CRF 250L, which is my first motorcycle. At the start of the year, it ran very poorly and I had to bring it away for service, which was quite a bummer. So I missed out on like the first 3 months of the season. Mostly because I didn't really know that it was going to run badly, obviously, so I hadn't really planned to bring it away at all. And then, of course, because it was the start of the season, everyone and their mother had an appointment at the service center to get shit checked, get their oil changed, get their brake fluid overhauled or what have you. And that meant that with my motorcycle running poorly, I had to wait for like a month and a half before it even got into service, and then I lost it for like 3 weeks while they were working on it, and to be fair, while we were away. So, not fantastic, but when I got it back, first of all, it's running fabulously now. Very blind corner and very narrow road. When I got it back, boy did the year turn around for me and my motorcycling adventures. So Frank came up on his motorcycle just as he did last year. Together we rode down to the cabin, which is sort of in the middle of, I'd say the middle of Norway, but if you look at the map that's not even remotely true. It's sort of in the middle of mainland Norway, between Trondheim and Oslo, and then slightly towards Bergen, like smack dab in the middle. That was the first real proper long trip I've taken on this motorcycle, and I have taken quite a few since, which was fun. So we did that. Obviously we did a bit of riding around the area there, and then I rode it back, and let's see, then it was summer break time, then we went away. Didn't do particularly much of motorcycle riding. We went back to the cabin, which was a delight, but with the car and with Signe and Saga the dog, but not with my motorcycle. Still delightful, not very motorcycle-y. Anyway, when we came back from summer break, I took a big old day trip of 360 kilometers, which on this motorcycle, you know, that was the horn. I hit that accidentally. I hope there were no deer around, because there are some here and they get spooked. Anyway, took a big old day trip to the Atlantic coast, which is basically where we are right now as well, except we're about 200 kilometers further south than where I went just after summer break. And that was a big solo road trip for the first time. And then I went to the Netherlands. Frank and I rented Honda Groms, which was, well, actually we rented a Grom and a Monkey, but you know, potato. That was absolutely delightful. Unfortunately, although kind of hilariously in an ironic sort of way, I got a speeding ticket. My first speeding ticket ever, going 10 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, having sprinted away from some traffic light on a Honda Grom. And if you're not in the know, these are the slowest motorcycles in existence. Like, they top out at 100. You are doing an impressive job if you're breaking speed limits anywhere. But I managed, because the speed limit was 50 and I was doing 60, and that was expensive and annoying. But lesson learned. Don't drag race away even when you're on tiny motorcycles that shouldn't be able to break any speed limits. That was a fun day though. Other than that, we went to the sort of middle of the Netherlands where there's a bunch of big rivers cutting through the country from east to west, and basically blasted little dikes all day. There's a bunch of dikes all the way along these rivers, which of course, because they're rivers, are nice and swervy. They're also far from main roads because they're a bit like this actually. They're narrow, there's no traffic whatsoever. So on these teeny tiny motorcycles, you just have the blast of your life without really doing anything, you know, legally questionable. Unless, of course, again, you start drag racing away from traffic lights. Let's not talk about that anymore. Hilariously fun day. Honda Groms, fabulous toys. Honestly, if I had the garage space and the money, one of those would be just hilarious for like city traffic, commutes, playing in town, that sort of thing. As it stands, I've got my trusty old CRF, which is doing well and is taking me on a last road trip of the season. Have you noticed, by the way, that we have basically not come across any cars whatsoever on this road? We're going to do about 35 kilometers, I think, and then we end up by the exit point of this island, which is a sketchy, very long, very steep, very dark, very deep tunnel that goes under the sea, basically. There's a bit of I don't know if the strip of sea that is between the islands and the mainland is still called Atlantic Ocean. There's basically a strip of Atlantic Ocean between this island and the mainland, which is just that side, on my right-hand side there. This tunnel that connects this island and the mainland is 5-6 kilometers, I think it's 6 kilometers long. And it goes down at 10% of a gradient for 3 kilometers, and then up at a 10% gradient for 3 kilometers. It is insane. It feels like you are diving into some dwarven mine. At least it's being, you know, this whole road system here in rural Norway is sort of being overhauled and made more modern. This tunnel is quite nice and wide, so at least that is something. You've got an overtaking lane on the way back up in case you're behind a truck or something, which did happen to me on the way in here. So, got to overtake, which was just delightful. Very dandy indeed. And then there is another island. I basically tagged 2 islands together in this one day trip. This one is called Hitra, which I think I mentioned at the start. The other one is called Frøya, which is slightly further north, and there's another tunnel just like that, except that tunnel is just under maintenance right now, which means that it doesn't look like a modern tunnel. It actually looks like a dwarven mine. It's also lit by what is effectively a string of fairy lights along the whole way. It is fucking terrifying to ride into that tunnel, and I was extremely happy that I realized a tunnel like that was gonna come up, because I took off my sunglasses beforehand. If I hadn't, I don't know what I would have done. Maybe I would have had to stop in the tunnel, because even going in without sunglasses, you can basically not see shit while your eyes adjust for the first 10-15 seconds. It is god-awful, horrifying, and I'm glad I don't have to go to that tunnel anymore and just have the slightly more modern one to contend with later when we are done with this road trip. So, Hitra and Frøya is another... They've actually been on my bucket list for quite a while. Frank actually rode here while he was with us this summer. After we came back from the cabin, he headed off back to the Netherlands and basically did 4 or 5, maybe more days, no, more like a week and a half actually, like coastal Norway to get back down. And on, I think, his first day, this is where he ended up. Of course, the trees looked a lot more green then and not as yellowy brown as they do now. And he recommended it. The only thing he said, of course, was be aware of the tunnels. So I was aware of the tunnels, which is good. And he also pointed out, which I've noticed myself being here for a day, that there are not a lot of obvious places to put up a tent or a hammock. Because he went motorcycle tenting. He had his whole life into cases, into hard cases on the back of his motorcycle. So he had set out to go tenting, and of course you've got a field here, which is some farmer's field, so you can't do that. And that's basically, those rocky rock formations are bizarre. Are you seeing this? That's really cool. Also those mountains in the distance on the other side of the fjord. Anyway, yeah, so the rule in Norway is that you have to stay away from any sort of building, I think 150 meters, but beyond that, it's basically free game. Of course, you can't disturb farmers and stuff. I think I'm gonna go that way, that seems... That's a cool little sight. The sheep running away. Sorry, sheep, I know I'm a bit loud. I wasn't gonna intrude on you, though. So like that, you can't just put up a tent in a sheep's field, because that's intruding on the farm's operations and stuff. You can't do that. But beyond that, beyond like farming fields, it all looks like that. Rocky and bouldery, and there's this thing my family likes to say, I don't know if this is a Dutchism or just a my family-ism, but the ground is very shallow, which, by that we mean that you can't put tent pegs into the ground because the rock layer is so close to the surface. So you basically can't pitch a tent anywhere here. You'd have to find woods and then have a hammock, which Frank didn't have. So he had a hard time finding a place to sleep here. Still, for a day trip, because I am not planning on sleeping here whatsoever, I am heading back home to Signe and to Saga and to dinner. For a day trip, it's absolutely delightful. But yeah, it's been on my bucket list for a while. At the start of the year, we actually drove past here on the way to, of all things, a rally obedience competition for Saga the dog. So, Signe has been doing a bunch of dog stuff for the last 2 years, ever since she adopted Saga. So she's been following courses and doing training with her. She's now being educated to become a professional dog trainer and deal with other people's dogs' problems. But one of the things she does is rally obedience, which is a sport where you basically follow a course of laid out signs. I'm lugging the engine a bit, whoopsie. You follow a course of laid out signs, and on each of these signs there is an instruction of sorts, of a command or a movement or a motion, something fun that you need to complete with your dog, and then you move to the next sign and to the next sign. So there was this competition very close to what is called Atlanterhavsveien, the Atlantic Ocean Road, which is, if you get back to the mainland, you're going an hour left to Trondheim. It's about an hour more to the right. It's closer to Ålesund, that direction, more further down along the coast. So we drove past here. Anyway, that was at the start of the summer season, and the weather was absolutely frightful. We had 2 days of competition and they both completely rained away. Also, in addition, just to kick up the fun a notch, Saga got herself disqualified on the first day because she peed on one of the signs, and obviously you're not supposed to have the dog pee in the field at all, let alone on the signs, because that is very distracting to the very strong and sensitive noses of all the other dogs. So we drove the 2-3 hours, might have been even more actually, whatever, doesn't really matter. We drove 3 or 4 hours to Atlanterhavsveien in the pouring rain, stayed there for 2 days in the pouring rain. Saga got herself disqualified on the first day and did so. At least she finished the course the second day. So, very much ups and downs. Anyway, I finally got to go here. Like I said, it's a Tuesday, so technically it's sort of a working day, but I worked a bit through the weekend, and boy am I glad that I did. It is 17-ish degrees out. It has hardly been windy today, which is especially bizarre because we are on the coast. It is, as you can see, not cloudy even slightly. It was a tiny bit cloudy this morning, and also it was chilly. I actually rode in here with my thick winter gloves on and warm underwear on my body, but I took that off when I had a bit of lunch break earlier. So now I'm riding technically in my winter coat. It is a 4-season motorcycle jacket, 3-season motorcycle jacket. I guess 3 seasons technically. Cold weather anyway, and sort of wind and waterproof. It's by Revit. I think it's called the Triumph, but I'm not sure if they make it anymore. It's delightful though. I love it very much. When the motorcycle season is over, I actually take out the protectors and I wear it as a normal winter coat, because it comes with a liner that you can clip in and basically lines the entire thing, sleeves, body, everything. It's very nice. And I'm riding with my high beams on because that button, there's something wrong with that button. I have to move it 0.5 millimeter and it activates, which is crazy. Can I just point out that we still haven't come across any cars? Just standing on the pegs for a bit, stretch my legs. It's kind of bizarre. Also, we are about 24 kilometers in, so it should be about 10 more kilometers until we get to the big scary tunnel, which is where I'll bid you adieu. Anyway, I was talking about my outfit for the day. So I'm wearing a Revit windproof, waterproof thing, which is, it's a little bit warm, especially because I'm wearing a jumper underneath, and then I am also wearing a an undershirt, a polyester type sweat wicking undershirt, and under that I was wearing thermal underwear, like a woolen body tight shirt. And like I said, it got a little bit warm because it is now 17-ish degrees, and that is basically Norwegian summer temperatures. So I took off some of the warmth and it is quite pleasant now. My body is still a bit on the warm side because I'm not letting in any air. That's the only downside of the Revit Triumph jacket I'm wearing. It does not breathe whatsoever, which is fine for winter and wearing it as a normal winter coat, but on a sort of medium warm autumn day, it is still a bit warm. So I've been riding all summer with my completely perforated jacket on, actually, which has been quite nice. It's by Macna, which is, I think, also a Dutch brand. Both Revit and Macna are Dutch brands, so I feel unintentionally representative of my home country, which is ridiculous. I didn't actually know when I bought the thing that Macna was a Dutch brand as well, but here we are, which is kind of fun. I did buy it in the Netherlands, to be fair, so I could have guessed. But it is kind of cool. I don't know how big Macna is, but it's cool to see that Revit is one of the biggest, at least in the casual-ish market, one of the biggest motorcycle apparel brands, alongside the likes of Alpine Star, for example. Which is cool. The Netherlands got a bit of a foothold. Anyway, what else? I'm wearing very wind and waterproof boots, which are not by Revit. They are, I cannot for the life of me remember right now. They are an American brand. I think they're from Michigan, if I remember rightly. They are very cool, and they went out of production, so I snagged a pair, and now they aren't available anymore. My pants are by Fuel, and I am slightly annoyed about my pants because fairly quickly after I bought them, these are the Sergeants, which are very cool, but they're a bit too short, especially around the waist, and very quickly after I bought these, they came out with a Mark II that had a longer and slightly tighter waist. So that felt like a bit of a bummer. But for the time being, I wear them with a belt, and I only wear them when I'm sitting down, so they are perfectly fine. And I love the styling of them, which is really nice. And then my gloves are also Revit. Like I said, I was riding in with my winter gloves on, which are also Revit. They are waterproof, very nice and toasty, but for the second half of the day, they were a bit too much. I actually always ride with 2 gloves on me if I don't, or if I ride any more than like 10 kilometers, because you don't know what the day is going to bring unless you are aware sort of in advance that the day is going to be like this. In Norway, usually you do not know what kind of weather the day is going to bring, and at the recommendation of noted motorcycle journalist Zach Horse, I ride with spare gloves. So I ride with a thick pair of watertight gloves in case it rains or is colder than I anticipated, and I have these as well, which are nice and aerated. Absolutely delightful. So at least these breathe, unlike my jacket and my shoes. And then my helmet. I don't know why I'm walking you through my entire motorcycle outfit. My helmet is a showy Glamster, an all black one. I actually wanted an all white one, but they were like 4 months on back order, so I got an all black one, which is a little boring and not quite what I wanted, but it looks very cool. The only thing I hate about it is, well, there's multiple things I don't really love about it, but the biggest standout thing is that it's fucking loud. I've got another shoey helmet in the Netherlands, which was available for 60 entire euros second hand on the Dutch equivalent of Craigslist. And according to the seller, it had only been worn 3 times thereabouts. I don't really care. It was clean, and I threw it in the washing machine, like the liners, and that was all grand, so it is perfectly fine now. Only 60 euros. That's a different model. I can't quite remember one. It's sort of one of their more entry level ones. And that one is so much quieter because it's got a slightly bigger shell, so it's got more padding, I guess. The chin bar also sits slightly lower, so there's less turbulent air that just yeets up across my face. This shoey Glamster that I'm wearing right now, it's pretty, but that's about the best thing I can say about it. It's also broke off the clip of the visor, which is slightly annoying. So the visor technically, it stays down, but it's not technically locked. So if I look over my shoulder at any sort of speed, my visor opens up slightly, which is not ideal. And also there's just turbulent air wafting through my, like the cracks in the visor all the time, which is not really ideal for anyone involved. Look at this, we're gaining some elevation. I don't know if you can exactly see through the trees. You can see straight ahead now. That's cool. Isn't this absolutely lovely? Such a bummer that I have to put the bike away, but this is such a good way to celebrate a pretty good motorcycling season. I have a goal for this motorcycle actually. I want to put 10,000 kilometers on its odometer before I sell it next year, and I can just check, which I think is that button. I have 3,000 kilometers left to go, which I won't manage that this year, but I will definitely manage that at the start of next season, and then sell it, and then hopefully I'll have saved enough for a Royal Enfield of some description. I don't know why I want that goal, but I like the idea of really having given this motorcycle all I am able to give it, in terms of, you know, of course 10,000 kilometers in the grand scheme of things really isn't that much, but I only commute on this motorcycle, which due to extraneous circumstances I haven't done in the last 3-4 months. And beyond that, I take a few short evening trips every now and then, and very occasionally a 300 kilometer day trip like this one. But it just feels like a, you know, doing something right for this motorcycle, because it's had a fuck ton of owners before me. It had, I think, I am either the 6th or the 8th. I think I've said 8th before, but I'm not convinced that's true. There's actually fewer people in the log if I look it up in the Norwegian vehicle registry. So I think I might be the 6th, but still, the 4-5 people before me have only put 18,000 kilometers on this motorcycle since 2014. I've had it for a year and a half now, and I have put 7,000 on it. So I want to get to 10,000 because that feels like a nice mile marker. Guy throwing out some trash. Person sitting there enjoying the autumn sun. That's fun. Yeah, it just feels like a nice marker, having ridden 10,000 kilometers on my motorcycle, my first ever motorcycle, and then selling it on, so that I feel like I really know the bike, and I don't want to say outgrown it, but I am really ready for that next step, if you will, for something more touring oriented, something more ready for tarmac, ready for curvy roads like this one, with less ridiculously soft suspension, and not a 21-inch front wheel probably, because as much as I do love riding gravel roads, 80% of my time is spent doing this, either just this or doing this riding to a gravel road. So it's just not really, I love it, but it doesn't make sense. I want something more roadstery, more naked bikey, maybe slightly scramblery, and I love the vintage look of the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650, so it is very likely that I'll be going for one of those next year. Money permitting, obviously. But for now, I get to enjoy the end of the season on my little Honda CRF 250L, and I get to do it riding into just a delightful landscape, not being held up even remotely by cars in front of me. And genuinely, I could not have asked for a better ending to this road trip and to this season. It is just fabulous. Right, honestly, we are getting pretty close to wherever the fuck that big tunnel is now. We can see some more cabins starting to pop up on either side of the road now. It's becoming a little bit more populated, so chances are we're going to meet at least a traffic sooner rather than later, and then we'll be diving into that tunnel where you won't be able to see anything. So I think I am just going to call it here. Thank you ever so much for watching. I had an absolute blast. Thank you for joining me on this motorcycle trip, tagging along for the end of the motorcycle season. I might do another tiny little video just before I put the motorcycle away, but we will see about that later. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you feel like it, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.